So I've played quite a few post-apocalyptic games, and some of my favorite ones is like Kenshi, Fallout, and DayZ, as well as Project Zomboid. In DayZ and Project Zomboid, I've been able to find some role-playing servers, perhaps you have as well. And one common trend I've been noticing is that people love to create factions, settlements, and nations, but they don't necessarily work properly. It seems like it's just a little base location. They call themselves a faction, and there's no real purpose behind it. There's no functionality. There's no systems in place so that it could actually become a true settlement. Now, the purpose of this video is for me to kind of give you my own perspectives and speculations on what would make a good, realistic settlement, one that has longevity, one where in your role-playing experience you can actually hang out and be in the settlement and it not be boring as hell. Now, there's a few things I'm going to be going over, and mainly it's like the governing systems, the offensive and defensive capabilities of this settlement, nation, or faction, as well as the much needed civilian infrastructure that should be in place. Also, I will be talking about the location and the purpose of the settlement. Now, people can be making settlements, nations, factions for many different reasons, and I'm not particularly going to be saying on like whether or not a faction or a group should have a settlement. More so, I want to talk about how to make a settlement actually, worth something to visit in these RP servers. First things first is location and the purpose of the settlement. Is it in an area where many people come across, and over time people have conglomerated, met up, and now there's some sort of trade route? Is it in a area that's rather advantageous to set up like some sort of shop, a bar perhaps, and then from that it will gain the civilian infrastructure needed to actually house people, such as like if you have a bar, you could have rooms for rent. You can have the people who own the bar also living there. It can bring in money so that your settlement, your faction, your people can actually get wealthier while in the game. But in order for it to be in a good location, it needs to have access to food and water. Otherwise, people are going to travel all the way to your settlement and they'll just die. Like they won't be able to eat, they won't be able to drink, they won't be able to sustain themselves. And then it kind of begs the question, like, why is this settlement even here if it's not even a self-sustaining settlement? Sometimes, let's say you have like a raider faction. They may set up in an area that's really well traveled, and then they will prey on unsuspecting travelers and traders. And then that's how they get their, livelihood. But personally, I don't think that raider factions have much longevity, and they're not necessarily, worthy of being a settlement, in my own personal opinion. So when you're deciding where this settlement for your people is going to be set up, you have to consider, is there a water source? Can you grow food? Can you trade? And once you have those three things, then you can start worrying about how is it going to be governed. Because now that you have a community of like-minded individuals with the same kind of goal, which is survival, then you can kind of figure out how you want to govern yourself, which is the next thing I want to kind of go over. Now, in an apocalyptic or post-apocalyptic setting, you kind of have to gauge how you will govern yourself. How can you properly and effectively govern yourself? You can have a council of members from different types of backgrounds in your settlement all vote on laws, or you can be one leader chooses everything for the group. They're the ones that say what happens, when it happens, and where it happens. Personally, I feel like having one single leader is kind of the optimal way to go, and then maybe having a second in command, because the rules of the settlement are so much more clearer, because you won't have a bunch of people fighting over it. Now, in order to be an effective leader, you need to have your goals and your vision made absolutely clear to other people in your settlement, so that when the leader is away on a mission or doing their RP somewhere, the people back at the settlement know exactly what the rules are to follow. If a trader's coming to the gate, are they allowed in? Do you have KOS rules to anybody approaching your gate? Do you take prisoners? Stuff like that needs to be completely understood by everybody within your faction, nation, or settlement. So personally, I say you should opt for electing one leader who makes the rules, who has the final say in everything. Obviously, you can get outsider opinions to whoever's not the leader, but at the end, in a post-apocalyptic setting where decisions need to be made instantly, chances are it's not a good idea to have a bunch of people voting on what should and shouldn't happen. You should have one person that makes the rules, that decides it, and at the end of the day, their word is final. Now, you should have a single leader, but you should also have a second in command. This person has to be trusted. You have to trust them, and you also have to know a lot about them. Now, this second in command has to be capable enough to get the job done. When you tell him to do something, you have to be able to trust them with some sort of resource or manpower to go out on a raid, to go out on a scavenging mission, to go out and barter with another settlement, to engage in diplomacy. You have to be able to trust them to do all of that, and you have to know that they're capable to do so. But here's the catch: they cannot be better than you. They cannot outshine you, because then eventually people will start to wonder if that second in command is better suited to be the first in command. So when choosing your second in command, they have to be capable, but they have to be not the type to outshine your own achievements. Now, you also have to consider what are your group's offensive and defensive capabilities. I like to break it down into 3 general areas. You have your guards, who may not be the best PvPers, but you do need them to pick up a weapon and fire it sometimes. So these people are better suited to be guards, people who understand the law, who can provide a deterrent to any would-be bandits that are wanting to raid it, because there's always 1 or 2 guards at the gates. So this also adds some sort of life to your settlement, because one thing I noticed is that lots of groups will put all of their people into the fighting force that they don't really have a fighting force, and everyone just bands together. They all go out on a mission, and then they kind of pull in Immortan Joe and send their entire army out on a single goal, while there's nobody back at the base to protect it, which gives some leeway for mutiny. Now, the second system is more so geared towards the special operations, the scouts, the ranger type group, the people that are very good at PvP, that can kind of book a Veli it. They can single-handedly take out an entire squad on their own. These people are really good at PvP, and you should utilize their capabilities. But you should not treat them as the regular fighting force, because you can have your main fighting force, which is the third point. The special operations should be sent to scout out locations, to observe other settlements, to watch the roads, to be able to be trusted on their own, that understand your rules of engagement really well. Whereas a normal fighting force may not know that. They may be trigger happy, and those people are better suited to be a part of just the regular main fighting force, because when you need bullets to fly, let them fly. But when you need a trained trigger finger, these PvP people should be more geared towards the special operations type units. And now you'll have the main fighting force, as I talked about before. This can be anything from like an actual committed group of fighters. They should only answer to the leader. They should not be the ones that go out on their own accord and try to seek out combat, but they should only, be with the The leader, the second in command, these people should be the ones that are going out on a raid alongside the special operations people when the time calls for it. Sometimes it may not be optimal to have a committed fighting force, but more so a militia that you take from your civilian population. Now, your civilian population is another thing I want to talk about. Your settlement, in order for it to be an actually effective settlement, you need to have some sort of civilian infrastructure. And this kind of comes together with the purpose of your settlement and the settlement location. If you need to sustain yourself, you need farmers, you need people who are willing to get water, you need people willing to run shops, to run their own shops, to create trade deals. But these people are merely civilians. They don't have any actual say in what happens nation-wise. They don't have any say in diplomacy. That's the leader's job and the second in command's job to be, thinking about. Whereas the civilians, they should just be more so committed to civilian life. Are they running an auto body shop? Are they running a corner store? Are they running a bar? And these people will increase the trade relations with everybody else, because they will be the ones engaging with everybody. Whereas you got your guards doing police matters in your region, in your settlement, committed there. You got your special operations going out, doing their thing, observing possible enemies, possible groups of raiders. And then you have that civilian force that lives there, which can be rallied together, or if you even have a committed fighting force, they are the ones that are, the bulk of the offensive and defensive capabilities. If your settlement comes under attack, you already have guards in place that could put some bullets down range and give enough time for the militia or your committed fighting force at home to actually, get their guns and combat this raider group or this other nation that you're at war with. Now, with your own diplomacy, you're the one who knows the server, whichever game it is that you're playing, and these rules may not necessarily just be for apocalyptic or post-apocalyptic type games. This could be for any RP server game that has some sort of settlement system. Now, your civilians need to understand the rules and they need to follow the rules. Maybe you have you're taking a cut from the trade deals going on, and that's their rent, so that they can continue living in the protection of your walls or your settlement's boundaries. Another important thing for your civilian infrastructure is you could have courier services, or your civilians could be scavengers going out to find specialty items and whatnot. Everybody likes to scavenge, and so you should most definitely give some leeway to your civilians to, let's say, go out and scavenge, come and go as they please. But you should also know who is an actual civilian and who's an outsider to your settlement. Otherwise, you may have some infiltrators from another group trying to get a layout of your settlement and your capabilities. So I know this video wasn't going into crazy detail, but I just wanted to point out some things for other role players who want to engage in some sort of settlement type gameplay, some RP, but don't necessarily know how about it should work. Maybe you do just want to be a sole survivor in your own hut. This doesn't really apply to you. Maybe you're just a nomadic wanderer and you'll come across settlements that kind of make no sense. But this is, in my opinion, how settlements in these DayZ, Project Zomboid RP servers should run. You should have a governance system. You should have a good location. You should have offensive and defensive capabilities. You should have guards. You should have special operations so that your PvP players can actually engage in PvP and do that sort of thing. And perhaps, if it calls for it, you can have a militia or a committed fighting force for wartime. But your settlement also needs to be inviting for civilians to actually want to come and go. You should have post offices, bars. You should have auto body services for vehicles. You should have a motel, maybe, stuff like that. Otherwise, all you're really doing is just kind of placing the name settlement, faction, this and that on top of something that doesn't really work. Because like, it's not really a fun place to RP. Otherwise, you're just stuck going to the safe zones to engage with people, whereas you know you're automatically safe. But if you could have a settlement away from these safe zones, it creates a better atmosphere. There's more story to be made. There's so much more added to the RP experience in these games. Now, that's all I really have to talk about here. So just the three things: get a governing system, get some offensive and defensive capabilities, and you need to make it inviting for civilians to want to come and go and engage in RP in your settlements. Otherwise, just keep it as an outpost. Just keep it as your own personal base and don't call it a settlement, because there's nothing to settle in there. You can't live there. You can't RP there. It's just not really all that fun. At least from my perspective. Perhaps you agree, perhaps you disagree on some of my points, but if you have different ideas, then do feel free to comment down below, because I'd love to hear them, and I'm sure others would too. Thank you so much for watching. Peace.